This is Jeff Overholt, lead coach for Golf Performance Coaches, and I'd like to spend some time going over some very key steps that you will need to take over the coming 5 to 6 months to ensure that the time that you are putting in with developing skill has the best opportunity to transfer when you get out to the golf course as the weather becomes nicer. We have 4 very key steps that we need to be aware of, that we need to walk our skills up to ensure that, again, when we get outside to play, that skill that we are working on is going to be expressed in that environment. These 4 steps were adapted from a very strong book that we use all the time called Easier Said Than Done, which is written by Dr. Rick Jensen. The first stage is called Understanding Cause and Effect. The second step is Supervised Practice. Third step, Transfer Training. And the 4th step is Play. In our first step, Understanding Cause and Effect, we really work to identify an area of your game which needs improvement. So let's imagine that you feel, looking at past statistics with your coach, that your ball striking needs to get better. You need to hit more greens in regulation, or you need to hit more fairways, for example. We then need to look at getting a better understanding of why faults are made. So we may start to look to say, well, maybe I'm missing greens because of the fact that I'm always missing greens to the right, and my ball is curving too much to the right. So we need to go ahead and set up a plan to modify behaviors or movements. So we need to look deeper and get a better understanding of why does my ball curve to the right, and maybe start to look at some pieces of your technique that would make it either curve less to the right or even maybe make it curve left if that's something of interest. So we might look at things such as your swing path and then other pieces of your technique that might be contributing to why you have a given swing path. This is your typical golf coaching session where there's this dialogue back and forth between the player and the coach, possibly looking at things like video to help discover different things that we want to make improvements on. From this step, now that we've identified the area that we want to improve, and we got a better understanding of what are the things that we need to change to make that new motor pattern or that new skill improve, now we need to spend lots and lots of time actually repeating the movement pattern. And we're going to call this supervised training or supervised feedback. So to actually ensure that a motor skill changes, the player has to put time actually firing very specific signals from the brain out to the associated muscles to create this new movement pattern. The key in this phase is that we're getting feedback from a coach. They will be able to act as mirrors to really show the player what they look like. And in this phase, the player really spends lots of time engaging in drills or movements that him and his coach have decided upon that are going to really help reroute or retrain this new skill. Block training dominates this step. And block training is really a type of training where we don't change too many variables. So for instance, we would typically in this stage spend lots of time with a similar club, with a target, or possibly not even with a target. And we'd also do things to the movement pattern, such as making it smaller or working on it in a slower speed. We'd also look to train the pattern outside of a typical golf coaching session where you're actually hitting a golf ball. So the more time that the player can actually spend grooving this motor pattern, either without a ball, in a gym environment, or even in front of a mirror at home, the better. Really important at this stage to resist the temptation to move to a new concept or theme. And this is something that often happens in golf coaching sessions, is that players and coaches will jump to a new concept or theme after they've determined an initial cause and effect at the previous session. Over a winter phase, we're typically going to spend a couple months on this supervised feedback stage. And it really depends how many hours the player is putting in. The more time that the player puts in, the quicker we can move to the next step. The third step on our journey is what's called transfer training. This is now where we need to train an environment that looks like what we encounter when we actually play golf. So this is where we expose our new skill to conditions that simulate those which we would experience on the golf course. And oftentimes we do it in a very game-like environment at our practice sessions. Random training would now dominate this step. And this means that we need to start changing variables, because when we play golf, there are multiple different variables that change from shot to shot. For instance, we would start to change the club that we hit on each shot. We may start to change the target. We may start to change a certain flight of the shot or the amount of time between shots. Essentially, changing variables places more stress on the skill, and oftentimes players will not see the same success that they had when they were in our last step, which we called our supervised practice, that was predominantly in that blocked environment. Please resist the temptation to look for another solution to the problem when you experience not as much success in your practice sessions. When we're working on transfer training, our goal is to ensure that we are going to progress to our next step here, where we're going to actually start playing with the skill. So please remember that our goal is not to be really good at practice. Our goal is to be really good when we actually play golf. And this third step is absolutely imperative for moving the skill to the next stage. Always remember that whatever you spend a lot of time on, you get good at. So we want to make sure this third step looks very, very similar to what happens when we actually play golf. Then we've got our fourth step, where we actually need to play golf on an actual golf course with our new skill. And now we need to get comfortable with standing on a tee with trees on the left and right, and being comfortable with and committing to the fact that now, because of the time that I put on steps 1, 2, and 3, that I'm confident that it's going to show up when I play. And if you have spent enough time on those steps, there's a very good chance that it will. Please understand when we play that the other pillars of performance, which would be our mental, tactical, and physical skills, have a big impact on the expression of a skill. So now we're starting to put into play other skills, such as decision making and what you're eating when you play and who you're playing with, all have an impact on what your golf ball will do. So again, now we're exposing the skill to another level that is going to be really important, that when we get to our last step, which for many of you, our ultimate goal is to ensure that our new skill pops up when we compete, will actually happen. So we'd even encourage you, when we're getting to the beginning of our competitive phase, that we play in a couple introductory events to give ourselves, or give that skill a little bit time to show up when we're actually playing in competition, because then there's going to be additional stressors that are being placed on that skill. Please rest assured that if ample amount of time on each of the 4 steps that we've described, there's the best chance that in 5 to 6 months, you're going to have a very different skill, and your golf swing or whatever skill you guys have chosen to embark on improving will have changed. Fortunately, learning takes time. Because it takes so long, not everyone will do it. Please keep that in mind over the next 6 months, when often some of those practice sessions you're not seeing necessarily the results that you're looking for. Rest assured that if you spend an appropriate amount of time on each step, we believe that you will be very, very pleased with what you're going to see when you start to play golf outside. We look forward to going on this journey with you. Have a great day.